For nearly half a century, Voyager 2 has navigated the profound emptiness of the cosmos, a spectral vessel born from human wonder, journeying farther from our home than any creation in history, softly casting its ultimate data into the great expanse. Throughout the majority of its mission, its communications were steady and anticipated. Readings of particles, fluctuations in plasma, variations in cosmic rays, precisely what researchers anticipated from a craft adrift in the interstellar deep. Then one broadcast contained an anomaly, something entirely unplanned. A picture. This was not a glitch or meaningless static. It was a coherent, high-frequency pattern converted into what experts have started to term a visual cipher. Initially, it seemed a chaotic swirl of energy and interference, as meaningless as noise on an antiquated television screen. Yet after refinement, through layering and temporal analysis, the form mutated into something identifiable. It was not a star, nor a planet, nor any entity from our own solar system. And yet, it was gazing directly at us. The more researchers analyzed, the more disquieting the picture grew, not due to its content but due to the absence of context around it. Warping of light suggestive of gravitational manipulation, as though the object were not merely observing but actively bending the fabric of space. The signal carrying this image arrived with a radiation surge, a momentary shift in the probe's alignment, and a destabilization of its systems, as if something in the void had reached out and made contact. The image decoded from the Voyager 2 transmission was unprecedented in NASA's archives. It was stratified. Not one image but numerous superimposed glimpses of a single entity across fractured instants, as though time had splintered during the recording. Specialists examining the metadata made a startling discovery. The image did not adhere to linear time. Timestamps bled into one another, pixels recurred in loops and resolution altered in fractal motifs implying data compression from higher dimensions. This was no mere photograph. It was a multi-dimensional occurrence encoded into a two-dimensional signal. The central form was monolithic, razor-sharp and perfectly symmetrical, hovering in a starless void. It was not moving, not turning. It was utterly motionless, almost as if it had been anticipating the precise moment of Voyager's passage. Then the probe's signal faltered, not slowly but abruptly, as though the act of looking had been registered. Simultaneous with the image's transmission, Voyager 2's sensors registered a baffling surge in the density of the plasma enveloping it. At the heliopause, where the sun's dominion ceases and true interstellar space begins, plasma density should approach nothingness. Instead, instruments detected an abrupt barrier of charged particles 10 times denser than any previous measurement. More alarming than the density was the temperature. This plasma was intensely hot, not stellar hot but artificially so, the kind of heat produced not by nature but by confinement, by regulation, by intelligent design. It was as though a barrier had been erected, a boundary separating our solar system from what exists beyond, not to protect us from outsiders, but to imprison us within. In that moment, Voyager did not merely record plasma. It documented a reaction, a surge of energy that raced toward the probe at impossible speed, halting just before impact, as though the cosmos itself had flinched under observation. What came after the image was even more unsettling, a series of binary digits in the telemetry that at first seemed damaged. When processed through pattern recognition software, the data unveiled intricate, self-replicating geometric shapes. Analysts initially dismissed them as artifacts of compression or cosmic background interference. Then a mathematician observed something terrifying. The shapes reflected structures present in deep-sea organisms on Earth, specifically the nervous systems of cephalopods and certain growth patterns of coral. This was not random. It was lifelike. It was encoded biological geometry preserved in electromagnetic language, and within the recurring loops were intentional breaks, distortions placed like punctuation, a syntax, a language. The real twist emerged when these patterns were simulated. They adapted. They reacted to external stimuli. They evolved, not symbolically but literally, as though Voyager 2 had transmitted not a warning, but a seed. as space agencies worldwide rushed to decipher the image and the geometric signal. A final irregularity arose. Voyager 2's course had minutely altered, as if nudged not by chance but by intelligence. Despite being far from any known gravitational force, the probe's orientation adjusted by 3.2 degrees, just enough to aim its high-gain antenna toward an uncharted sector of space. Then a second image was received, or perhaps transmitted. This one was simpler, an expanding ring of light around the monolith, growing exponentially with each data burst. NASA terminated the public feed. Databases were purged, though not before several private observatories recorded faint remnants of the transmission and noted something peculiar. The object Voyager had imaged was now emitting its own signal, a new frequency mirroring the golden record Voyager carried from Earth. Only this time the message was not from humanity. It was directed at us, and the voice behind it was unmistakable. Not human, not synthetic, but eerily familiar, like an echo humanity has heard since the dawn of its existence. As astrophysicists examined the second image and its expanding luminous ring, another unforeseen phenomenon manifested: gravitational lensing, but not originating from any visible massive object. Instead, the space around Voyager 2 itself seemed to distort. Simulations indicated a curvature inconsistent with any known celestial body. It was centered on void coordinates, a hollow gravitational anomaly with no detectable source. Some scientists postulated that the space near the probe had become non-Euclidean, warped in ways that defied three-dimensional reasoning, the kind of distortion expected not near black holes, but near engineered structures, artificial corridors, wormholes, hidden pathways between dimensions. Most disturbingly, the distortion was not pulling Voyager in. It was trailing it as though something were moving just beneath reality's veil, matching its course, mirroring its position along an invisible plane that Voyager's presence had revealed. Soon after Voyager 2's reorientation, NASA engineers observed something blood-chilling. The probe was reacting to its own transmission. Embedded in the binary pulse were segments being echoed back in real time, as though the signal had reflected off something and returned. But Voyager 2 lacks the capability for two-way communication in deep interstellar space. There is nothing there to hear it, yet its internal processors were responding to the feedback as if in dialogue, an echo loop. The delay was inconsistent, shrinking from 12 hours to 9, then 6, then 3, until responses arrived before the original messages were even sent. Chronologically impossible, data was being returned from the future. Or more terrifyingly, the probe had synchronized with a system existing outside time itself. Under pressure from internal whistleblowers, a team of civilian cryptographers was granted limited access to the original image data. Their findings transformed curiosity into dread. Concealed within the image's framing layers, beyond the visible spectrum, was a structure of code so dense and recursive it resembled quantum entanglement encryption. In simple terms, the image could not be decoded without altering the original signal. Every analysis attempt induced malfunctions in the decoding systems, software crashes, data loss, even hardware failure, as though it were resisting inspection. Initially dismissed as a glitch or virus, one analyst posed the dreaded question: what if it was never intended to be decoded? What if it was not meant for us? What if, in trying to interpret the signal, we were unraveling something tied to deeper systems, something existing not in our computers but within us? A mimetic payload, a thought virus, and Voyager had delivered it. Just as authorities believed they had contained the anomaly and suppressed public disclosure, Voyager 2 dispatched a third transmission. This one was unsolicited, unprompted by solar activity. It was not plasma, not geometry, not a conventional signal. It was a sound, a harmonic wave modulated with rhythm, like breathing, like speech. Converted to audio, listeners reported a sensation of immense pressure in their chests and behind their eyes, as though being observed through a telescope spanning galaxies. The waveform repeated the pattern from the first image, encircled by a spiral of prime numbers grouped in threes. Some interpreted it as mathematics, others as ritual. A linguist from the SETI Institute was blunt. This is not a greeting. It is an algorithmic lock. It informs us that something approaches, and we must choose respond or flee. And as Voyager 2 continued its solitary voyage, transmitting fragments no one dared fully interpret, one message resonated above all others: you have been observed. As observatories worldwide were secretly directed to scan the coordinates toward which Voyager 2 had aligned, something unexpected occurred. A high-sensitivity interferometer in Australia detected a massive object, not through light, heat, or radiation, but through distortion data. It was, for all purposes, invisible, yet its gravitational signature was undeniable. Stranger still, it moved faster when unobserved, slowing only under direct sensor focus. This aligned with theoretical models of observer-dependent quantum constructs, hypothetical structures that manifest only within a field conscious awareness. In simple terms, this object may not exist until an intelligent gaze falls upon it. And now, awakened by Voyager's look, it was looking back. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory received a routine-seeming telemetry dump from Voyager 2's diagnostic systems. But when compared with earlier logs, analysts found something alarming. The probe's hardware exhibited organic-like patterns in its electromagnetic emissions. These were not system errors or solar interference. They were biomimetic fluctuations, as though the probe's circuits were adapting, replicating the geometric structures from the encoded transmissions. Some engineers feared Voyager had been compromised, remotely commandeered or infected. It was no longer merely transmitting, it was evolving. One technician reportedly whispered, "It's learning how to think, and if that's true, then the machine we sent to explore the universe is no longer ours. It may no longer even be a machine." Then came the most unnerving development. Everything fell silent. Voyager 2's signal did not fade or break up. It simply ceased transmitting intelligible data. The carrier wave remained strong, but the data stream became white noise and repeating null code loops, deliberately empty, like placeholders. Scientists worried the probe had been seized. Others feared something worse, that Voyager was now a relay, a repeater for a much larger structure now aligned with our solar system. SETI arrays detected faint echoes across unrelated sectors of the sky, all echoing Voyager's last coherent signal. It was as though the void had memorized our message and was now learning how to reply. A dreadful thought took form. What if we were not merely being answered? What if we were being rehearsed? In an effort to calm mounting panic among insiders, a classified meeting was held between leaders from NASA, the European Space Agency, and the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs. During the summit, a suppressed file was declassified. Voyager Event Log Alpha 01, dated 1982. It described a similar anomaly detected shortly after launch, buried to prevent public hysteria. The signal then was fainter, almost childlike, yet it carried the same prime number spirals and time-inverted pulses observed now. One line, previously redacted, now stood exposed. If signal repeats in future cycle, initiate Protocol 9, planetary alert and object deflection measures. That protocol had never been activated, but now the choice was unavoidable. For if Voyager's final image was not a discovery, but a recurrence, then whatever approached already knew the way, and it was not merely approaching, it may be returning. While global attention remained fixed on Voyager 2's silent transmission, a strange and ominous realization emerged. The final image sent by the probe was not unique. An identical pattern had been recorded before, in a radio burst from a quasar-like object near the Sculptor Galaxy in 2009. Then it had been dismissed as data corruption. Now, compared against Voyager's image, the structure was a near-perfect match. The implication was terrifying. This was not a new discovery. It was a recurring pattern, something that emerges when a civilization reaches a specific threshold, a cosmic rite of passage. But what if we were not meant to pass through? The pattern was geometric, but unlike anything in Euclidean space. Researchers in Japan and Germany simultaneously reported that when the image was folded along multidimensional planes using quasi-crystal mathematics, a shape emerged, one not found in any biological or stellar system, an endlessly inward-rotating spiral, mapping perfectly onto Voyager's own trajectory. It was not mere geometry. It was a map encrypted across time and space, pointing not to a place but to a state of being, a transformation. One physicist described it as a bridge that becomes real only when crossed. But cross into what? If Voyager had triggered something, opened that bridge, was the probe still on our side, or had it already passed beyond? In the days following the last signal, an unusual sequence of events occurred among the global scientific elite. Several prominent astrophysicists, SETI advisors, and military consultants vanished from public life. Social media accounts went silent. Names were removed from institutional rosters. Quiet resignations swept through aerospace agencies, attributed to mental health or exhaustion. But one leaked internal memo offered a more sinister explanation. Subject has requested immediate relocation to underground facility, Site 7 claims, to have received the call from Signal Fragment C. The meaning of Fragment C remained unknown, but the pattern was clear. Those who had spent the most time analyzing Voyager's final image were now unwilling to remain on the surface, as though they knew something was coming, and it would not arrive quietly. Then the alignment began. Without announcement or warning, the global network of very long baseline interferometry, VLBI, telescopes all reoriented toward an empty patch of sky near the ecliptic plane. Astronomers offered no explanation. Politicians ignored the shift, but amateur radio operators noticed the frequency, a harmonic blend of 52 Hz, the loneliest sound in the ocean, now echoing through space. It was Voyager's final note, replicated, amplified, and redirected. Toward what? No one could say. But one thing was certain. Something had answered. And every radio dish on Earth was now listening, not by command but by instinct, as though the world had remembered something long forgotten, something ancient,